And welcome back to lecture series by Professor Dr. Shilpa Khatri Babbar. This lecture is on the views of Max Weber while perceiving law, lawyers, judges, and the courts as social engineers. So, we are primarily going to draw on Max Weber's ideas on rationalization of law and on social engineering. Among the sociological classics, Max Weber is widely considered the founding father par excellence of the modern sociology of law. The sociology of Max Weber most fundamentally rests on a perspective of society as being made up of social relations or human interactions. The interactions take place between two or more actors and are guided by the motivations and intentions of the actors involved. In contrast with behavior, which is not meaningful but casually determined, human interaction is essentially intersubjective and meaningful. The task of sociology, according to Weber, is to understand human conduct in as much as it is meaningful. The procedure associated with uncovering the motives of action is referred to as understanding, or the German term which he uses, Verstehen. Weber holds that by reaching an understanding of human action, sociology can also explain that action's course and consequences. It is important to note that the method of understanding is surely not subjective because it relates to the motivations and intentions of the various actors who are involved. While attempting to understand motives and meanings, we must proceed, Weber insists, from an empathetic attitude. The sociological techniques to grasp meaning are replicable and verifiable on the basis of established standards of methodology. These techniques include direct observation of an emotive action and understanding by means of identifying a motivational link between meaning on the one hand and action on the other. Such a sociological perspective, oriented at uncovering the motives of human interactions, is referred to as interpretive sociology. Exemplifying the idea of value freedom, Weber maintains that sociologists cannot bring their own personal values to the findings and judgments they have arrived at in the conduct of their research. Even though their initial choice, indeed, while making the choice of the subject matter, may have been guided by personal values, however, one needs to be very cautious of this. Weber differentiates four types of human interaction: traditional action, which is carried out under the influence of custom or habit; affective action, which is guided by an emotion; value rational action, which is guided by a belief in the intrinsic value of a particular mode of conduct, irrespective of its consequences; and fourthly, purposive rational action, which is based on a conscious calculation of means towards a given end. Let me inform that these categories are ideal types, so we shall actually never encounter them in the real world out there in their pure state. What we'll find is a mixture, or at least a slightly contaminated case, if I might use and take the advantage of the pandemic language. Weber argues that modern societies are most essentially marked by a high degree of purposive rationalization. The purposive type of rationalization is also referred to as formal rationalization. Why? Because the mode or the form of conduct at the level of means is more important than the substance or the goal of action. In other words, it matters less what is done than how it is done. In more and more spheres of social life, efficient calculations are made to reach certain ends. Weber's theory applies to many important societal institutions, including science, politics, culture, and of course, to the one we are exploring right now, and that's law. Weber's discussions on the rationalization of politics bridges into his sociology of law. At the most general level, Weber ideal typically distinguishes three kinds of political power on the basis of the kind of legitimacy it enjoys. Traditional authority, which is based on the belief in a traditional source of power. Charismatic authority, which derives its legitimacy from an extraordinary quality of a political leader. And rational legal domination, which is based on a system of laws and is the typical form of legitimacy in the context of the modern state. Weber defines a state as a political community. Just let me pull this a little down. Yes. So it defines state as a political community which within a particular territory successfully claims a monopoly over the legitimate use of physical coercion. As soon as we say a legitimate use of physical coercion, he means authority. Weber's definition is thus, you would observe, is an instrumental one, defining the state not in terms of any objectives, but solely with reference to its means. Besides the monopolization of, so I think there is some problem with the movement of the slide. If you could just give me a minute, please. Yes, there it is with us. So, besides the monopolization of legitimate use of physical force as a means of domination, a state also exercises political authority within a particular territory through the organization of armed protection against outside attacks by the military, the protection of vested rights, administration of justice, the cultivation of cultural interests in the administration, the enactment of law through legislation, and the protection of personal safety and public order through police. Showing again the relevance of purposive rationalization, Weber argues that the administration of the various state functions is handed over to specialized institutions or bureaucracies just discussed that are purposively designed for the implementation of states' relevant policies. Bureaucracies are for Weber one of the most important characteristics of modern rationalized societies, as they indicate the extent to which the world has become calculable in terms of efficiency considerations and the extent to which the mysteries of the world that were embodied in traditionalistic ethical life have become demystified in favor of a rational calculus. Well, Weber's special interest in law is not surprising, given the fact that he had been a student of legal science, wrote his doctoral dissertation on it, and wrote, in fact, a second dissertation about aspects of medieval and Roman law, and had briefly worked as a lawyer too. As was the case with other classic German scholars such as Georg Simmel and Ferdinand Tönnies, Weber's perspective on law rests on a basic conceptual typology. Weber distinguishes law from custom and convention. Custom is defined as a practice that is valid because of practical convenience. The validity of convention is acquired through an external guarantee, but then this guarantee is merely informal by means of public disapproval. The validity of law, like that of convention, is also externally guaranteed, but here in this case, it is through a formal, a specialized staff that is expressly in charge of compliance with legal rules and enforcement of violation. In fact, to quote him, And I would like to showcase that definition to all of you on your screens. So just give me a minute again. So here comes the definition, and I will just drag this up for your convenience. And I read it quote unquote: an order will be called law if it is externally guaranteed by the probability that coercion, physical or psychological, to bring about conformity or avenge violation will be applied by a staff of people holding themselves specially ready for that purpose, unquote. Here he is adding that the belief in the validity of legal rules need not be shared among all or even many members of society. So, for there to be law, what is important is that there must be an external guarantee of legal coercion by means of a specialized apparatus of enforcement. Well, in order to explain, and there is, I think, an overdose of social engineering with the series of lectures that we are on, for the slides refuse to move in a self mode. So, in order to explain the form of rationalized law in modern society, Weber differentiates between various types of rationalizations that can affect law. Specifically, he distinguishes substantive and formal rationalization. In general terms, substantive rationalization is based on certain values and conceptions of justice, particular values and conceptions of justice, whereas formal rationalization rests on general rules and procedures. In the political sphere, for example, substantive rationalization distinguishes an autocracy from a democracy by being based on the divine will of a ruler rather than the popular will of the people. At the level of formal rationalization, if I intend to distinguish between autocracy and democracy, then I would do so by basing the distinction on charisma and legality, respectively. In case of autocracy, it would be charisma. In case of democracy, it would be legality. Weber specifies the ideal types of formal and substantive rationality in terms of lawmaking, that's legislation, and law finding, that is adjudication, as the two central aspects of law. From the substantive viewpoint, Weber argues lawmaking and law finding are rational when they reflect general norms that exist outside the contours of legal principles and the logical generalizations of law itself, such as maybe ethical imperatives, ideological and religious beliefs, and also political maxims. Law is substantively irrational when legal decisions are influenced by concrete factors of a particular case on the basis of ethical, emotional, or political considerations rather than by general rules. As an example, Weber mentions the case of traditional Chinese law, in which legal officials could decide freely from case to case, bound only by a general reliance on sacred tradition. Likewise, Weber considers so called Qadi justice, named after the judge in a Muslim court, an instance of substantively irrational law because its jurisprudence lacks any consideration of general rules and is exclusively based on unique legal as well as extra legal circumstances of each individual case. With respect to formal rationality, Weber argues that law is irrational when legal decisions are based on means which are not intellectually controllable, such as in the case of oracles and ordeals. Oracles involve proclamations of law that are judged to be divine or sacred because of the authority of their source, usually in a high priest. In a trial by ordeal, the accused is subjected to a painful task, the completion of which determines guilt or innocence. Because in such cases there is no general standards of legal decision making, formal irrational law is unpredictable. Uh, Say something like charismatic law. By contrast, law is formally rational when it is solely based on general characteristics that pertain to the facts of the case, like in the case of positive laws. According to Weber, the rationalization of modern law in Western societies takes on the specific form of formal rationalization. Rationalized law is formal and abstract, exemplifying the disenchantment of the modern world. At the most general level, the quantity of law increases as society grow and become more complex. Why? Because there is an increased need to have specified legal rules in a society that is more anonymous and diverse. Accompanying this increase in the quantity of law, there is also an increase in the formal qualities of law. The formal rationalization of law implies that laws are codified, impartial, and impersonal. By codification of law, I refer to the fact that law is written down. The impartiality of modern law is revealed in its aspiration to be applied equally and fairly to all. Modern law is impersonal by being applied regardless of the personal characteristics of those involved. Only unambiguous general characteristics of the facts of the case are taken into account. When exemplifying the formal rationalization of law, Weber discusses the historical move from status contracts to purposive contracts. Status contracts allow for a change in the position of the parties involved. For instance, to become one's relative or acquire a slave, typically by invoking some magical or divine power. Purposive contracts, on the other hand, do not affect the status of the parties involved, but only aim to achieve some specific result or performance, such as the acquisition of a good in exchange for money. Formal rationalization in the case of purposive contracts, Weber maintains, increases freedom. Why? Because it allows people to make calculations to predict the legal consequences of their conduct. The freedom granted by formal rational law, however, remains itself also a formal matter, unfortunately, as inequalities that exist, for instance, in terms of economic position or political rights, are not taken into account. Lastly, if I see it at the cultural level, the secularization of law led to discarding the substantive irrationality and religious charisma and mystery from law, while politically speaking, the expansion of bureaucratic government because of its interest in clarity and orderliness also benefited the formal rationalization of law. Most importantly, Weber argues the formal rationalization of law accelerated because professional lay people began to play an increasingly important role in the courts. Weber argues for a centrality of professionalization in these developments because he considers the training of professional lawyers as the most important factor towards the formal rationalization of law. With this, we come to an end of Max Weber's opinion on social engineering. Happy learning and stay connected with the series. Thank you.